common in a lot of people, so I thought nothing of it and was getting ready to go back to sleep. As usual, my bedroom door was open with the hallway light turned on, and that's when I saw it. Nightmare Files. This dream has stayed with me for years. Although not profound or life-altering, I've never been able to shake the memory and the feeling of absolute terror and dread. To give some context, this was a number of years ago. Currently, I'm 23 years old. When this dream occurred, I was around the age of 11. As a child, I suffered from sleep paralysis for a number of years. At first, this terrified me to the point of me not wanting to sleep. It became so bad that I pushed myself to states of exhaustion before my body could no longer remain conscious, and I would just pass out, only to return to the horrifying imagery of my subconscious. The first time I ever experienced sleep paralysis, I still lived with my aunt. I awoke to the sensation of not being able to move, and this confused me but didn't scare me. It was only when I saw what stood in the corner of my room did the fear really start to set in. It was a hooded figure in all black. In his hand was some kind of weapon. It stood there staring at me. My eyes widened as I prayed for this to be some kind of dream or hallucination. I was frozen in fear. Its sharp, crooked dagger teeth began to form a smile. It slowly began to turn its head like a doll, continuing until it was at such an unnatural angle, and then it started to inch towards me. It didn't walk. It simply began to move closer. I can't really explain it. It edged closer to me, still staring at me. Looking back, I can still picture it, and it disgusts me. It continued until it was halfway across the room. Then without warning, it just stopped. This is when my blood ran cold. It slowly raises its arm from beneath its cloak to reveal its hideous, revolting arm. A mixture of rotting flesh and bone, decomposing right there in front of me. And the sight of it made me want to throw up. Then it did something I would never forget. Slow and methodically, it raised its hand and began to point. Not at random, not at something in my room, but at me. My eyes widened further, and my heart began to thump in my chest. It then places both hands upon his head and began to pull and twist his head back into place. The noise it made sent shivers down my spine and sent goosebumps and chills all over my body. It cracked and creaked and screamed back into place, and then the figure began to approach me. It was at that point, full-blown panic set in, and I began to struggle. I kicked and twisted and tried to throw my body, but I couldn't move. I couldn't move at all. I was trapped, paralyzed. I tried my best, but I could not break free. So I did what anyone would do in this situation. I screamed. I screamed with all my might. I thought that if my family was alerted, maybe they could stop it, it'd go away, or at the very least, they'd surely see what happened to me. But to my absolute dismay, no sound came out of my mouth. I tried again, but the same result. By now, the figure was almost at the foot of my bed. I continued to cry out for help. In my head, I was screaming like a madman, but in reality, not a sound could be heard. I looked up and it's here. The figure is at the foot of my bed, only now it's not smiling. Now it looks even more terrifying. Its teeth are aligned jaggedly, and I know it's going to sound stupid, but it looked hungry. I continued to struggle. It got closer and closer until it was right in front of me, at the side of my bed. I was frozen. It leaned in until it was face to face with me, and it was at this point I thought my life was over. It reached its arms out toward me, and it screamed a blood-curdling scream. I tried to close my eyes and prepare myself to be ripped apart, but no, nothing. Just like that, it was gone. I looked around my room with my heart thumping so hard I thought it would escape my ribcage. I was sweating profusely and was completely afraid. I scanned the room, but it was empty. I turned on the light, still nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. My light stayed on. The previous night's ordeal haunted me for the next day and I couldn't focus. I just wasn't myself. I tried to talk about it with my aunt, but she just blew me off and said it was a bad dream and maybe a demon that had taken a liking to me. I dreaded going to bed all day, and when night came, I wasn't prepared. I was terrified. I decided I wouldn't sleep in fear of whatever I saw would return. I tried my hardest, but eventually I began to drift away, and I struggled. My eyes became heavy, and tears began streaming down my face. I couldn't face it. Whatever that thing was, it had shaken me to my very core. It might sound silly to some, but I genuinely believed that when I fell back to sleep, that my life would be in serious danger. I sobbed and cried myself to sleep. The next morning I woke up and I was fine. No figure, no traumatic experience, nothing. Later on I would learn about sleep paralysis, as I did end up suffering from it quite a few years, and I ended up doing some research, which confirmed it all to be just sleep-related hallucinations. Eventually I did discover tricks to overcome the experience, and it works. If you too experience sleep paralysis, try researching it like I did. Good luck. I'm a 17-year-old girl and I'm homeschooled. In my free time, which can be most of the time, I like to watch true crime documentaries, forensic files, and sometimes a good thriller. I've been having constant nightmares, nothing out of the ordinary. Some bother me, some don't. I tend to wake up a few times during the night because I have a hard time staying asleep. One night I woke up, nothing wrong. Just kind of glanced at my phone and just out of the habit looking over at my door. There is a hallway over there, and I look because I always think that I might see something. I wear glasses, by the way, so I know my eyes can play tricks on me in the dark, and shadows are casting on the wall. This particular night, I woke up twice. When I woke up the second time, I did the same exact thing. I looked at my phone on my left, then rolled over to my right, and I see a figure of some sort directly across from me in front of my closet. My closet is close to my bed and didn't have anything to cast shadows onto. The thing was wearing a cloak and was dark with deep crevices in its face with red eyes. It was just smiling at me. I didn't stare at it long, just enough to know it wasn't my eyes playing tricks on me. I quickly shut my eyes and laid straight, hoping nothing would happen. My heart was beating so hard it was like I could hear it. I started to feel movement at the bottom of my blanket, and I completely froze, scared to move an inch. I've heard about sleep paralysis, but knew that wasn't the case, being that I can move. I spoke to my brother who studies psychology and asked about it. He gave me some advice and told me to spell out words in my head. Each night I have felt this presence of something in my room, but I was too afraid to try and open my eyes. I have recently gotten an eye mask to block out the sun in the morning, so when I open my eyes I won't see anything but the crack at the bottom. Last night when I was asleep, I had the mask on. I woke up and heard an off noise muffling my fan. I was barely able to look through the crack under my eye mask, but this time it was different. I couldn't move. It was actually sleep paralysis. I immediately felt my heart beating again, and I started spelling out words in my head as my brother told me to. This time, as I was peeking again, I still saw the figure. I don't know whether to believe if there was an actual demon hunting me, or I'm actually going insane. But the advice my brother gave me, it didn't help. In 2006 or 7, when I was around 8 or 9 years old, I experienced something quite strange. I had never really seen anything that could be considered creepy at my house, but one night, I certainly did. It was around midnight when I happened to wake up. This is pretty common in a lot of people, so I thought nothing of it and was getting ready to go back to sleep. As usual, my bedroom door was open with the hallway light turned on, and that's when I saw it. An abnormally tall, dark, faceless black figure in the corner of my room. It was looking down at me, staying quiet and still the entire time. I didn't really know what to think of it. Oddly enough, I did not feel scared. I was merely wondering, what is this thing? The tall figure continued to stand there, still staring at me. This seemed too real to be a dream. I decided to slowly turn around and face the wall instead. I covered myself with the blankets and closed my eyes. I don't know what the tall figure did after that, if it even left or not. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I decided against telling my parents about what had happened. They were pretty hardcore Christians, and I honestly did not want them to freak out. Yet, I eventually did decide to at least tell my mother about it. When I told her about it, surprisingly, she didn't freak out. Instead, she told me that she too seen a very similar, if not the same figure. Except her encounter was very different, and much more disturbing than mine. According to my mother's account, the tall, dark figure had also appeared to her in the middle of the night, but she was suffering from sleep paralysis. My father remained asleep next to her. Suddenly, the tall figure lunged itself at my mother and began to choke her. She was able to think of a prayer in her head when the dark figure finally backed away and disappeared. It was only then that my father woke up, but he still had no idea what had just happened. My mother then told me the reason I had not been attacked is because supposedly demons, as she thought it was, do not attack children. Personally, I see it as an omen. Some terrible things have happened to me over the years after the appearance of that dark figure, but I have since recovered and have a lot of support. I'm 20 years old now and still live in the same house, yet I've never experienced anything like that ever since. I can only wonder what that tall, dark figure was thinking as it stared at me on that night. I experienced sleep paralysis twice in my life so far. I will share both stories. I'm turning 22 this year. My first experience happened during the summer of 2015, and it was downright terrifying. It was before my senior year in high school. I've been watching horror stories on YouTube, which at the time was very cool and a popular thing. I came across a video of a horror narrator named Lazy Masquerade called 8 True Terrifying Sleep Paralysis Stories. I thought to myself, sleep paralysis? What the hell is that? Anyways, less than a week later, I experienced it. I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning. I was laying on my back. I couldn't move. All I could move were my eyes. All of a sudden, I saw a tall, dark figure. It looked like a man wearing a black hoodie with his hood up. He looked to be about 6'4", 250 pounds. Yeah, 6'4", 250. It sounds cliche, I know. I couldn't see his face, but he was looking down at me. This probably lasted about 2 minutes, but I was laying there thinking this man was going to slice my throat at any second. That's pretty much all I remember from that experience. Kind of ironic how shortly after watching a video on sleep paralysis stories, I experienced it. That was almost 5 years ago. And recently I had another experience. I had woken up a lot earlier than usual because my older sister was visiting us and had my niece and nephew with her. I visited for a little bit and caught up with my family that doesn't live with us. My parents took them and my younger sister out for lunch. I didn't go because we wouldn't be back in time for me to get ready for work. So I decided to go back to sleep for 2 more hours, then get ready for work. I woke up and thought I heard footsteps and a girl laughing. It wasn't my mom or my sisters. It didn't sound like a girl that I knew. I was laying on my back with my head turned facing the wall next to my bed, but also facing my window. I could see my cat sitting on my futon, staring at the corner of the room where my door was. Then I realized I couldn't move. I tried. I was completely paralyzed. I could only move my eyes. I only heard the laughing 3 times and the footsteps twice. It was coming from the hallway. My cat was staring intently at the corner I couldn't face, and I swear I felt like someone was in my room, which didn't make sense, because even if someone was in our house, my cat would hide. She doesn't like new people. This only lasted about 2 to 3 minutes. Next thing I remember, I could get up and I got ready for work. I told my coworkers about it, and we kind of just laughed and joked about it. My supervisor even told me a story that happened to one of his friends, supposedly talking to Satan during a sleep paralysis experience. I told my family later that night when I got home. So yeah, Those are two stories of my sleep paralysis experiences. It's weird how your mind plays scary tricks on you like that sometimes.
Nightmare Files.